You are going to run for the plant pot shelves when you see how enchanting this idea turned out. I'm stuffing some paper inside a medium pot to catch any potential drips. A tube of waterproof silicone is being inserted into a gun. I'm applying silicone to the bottom of the plant pot along all the holes. I'm spreading the silicone with a small knife to ensure the entire surface is covered. The bottom tray is being siliconed, then pressed back onto the bottom of the pot until it clicks into place. The silicone is also being applied to any inside holes. I'm applying hot glue to the bottoms of both the small and medium pots, then holding them together until the glue sets. Container garden soil is being added to the lower pot. Flowers are being planted into the soil. Any gaps are getting a little more soil filler. I'm giving the top pot a quick rinse to ensure it's completely free of soil, then tipping it ever so slightly to drain the water. The empty top bucket is getting filled up with water. I'm opening up a solar water fountain, which will be the key element to this feature. I'm attaching included extenders to a solar water fountain, which will help keep the water fountain centered. The fountain extenders are being cut to fit the water-filled flower pot. Then once set inside the water, the sunshine instantly activates the water fountain, creating the easiest water feature for any outdoor sitting area or garden space. There is nothing quite like the sound of trickling water while enjoying your outdoor space.
We're going to start with some plastic flower pots. You're going to need 3 small, 1 medium, and 1 large. Set aside 2 of the small planters. You do not need to paint those. So in a well-ventilated covered surface, spray paint the outside of your pots. It's best to use a couple of really light coats. So I'm spraying these pots here, and it's definitely not going to cover on the first try. I'm going to let it dry for maybe 20 minutes and then come back and add a second, even a third coat if needed until everything is covered. Once everything is dry, we're going to dry fit these together to make sure they look how we want them to look. So 1 small pot goes in the inside of the large one, and then the medium one goes on top of that. So I've got some room around here to plant, but I actually want some more room than that. So I am going to grab a large rock. You can use pebbles, gravel, or even soil for this. And then I'm going to put that small pot back in and add the medium one on top. So once I know that this all is exactly how I want it, now I'm going to take this apart and use some E6000 glue to attach these tiers together. I want to add something unique to this pot. I am going to put my address on the front. So I'm grabbing some vinyl stickers. It's best to use stickers that are good for outdoors. So you can head to the mailbox section of your hardware store and pick up some really good adhesive vinyl stickers. And I am just going to stick them right on the front of the pot. The glue is dry and we are ready to assemble. So I've got this tier put together here. I'm just going to set that inside. And then I'm going to grab some potting soil and fill in the large pot. And I'm going to repeat the process for the top, adding in that last tier and filling it in with potting soil in the orange pot and the yellow. I'm going to fill this planter for fall. So I grabbed some hardy annuals that I know are mostly foliage and will have rich, beautiful colors for another couple of months here outdoors. So I'm going to add a few in each pot, kind of around the edges, and filling in the gaps with extra soil. I'm going to top off this planter with a yellow mum for fall. This tiered planter is a great addition to my front porch for fall, and it's going to have some beautiful color for another couple of months. I hope this inspired you to take some of those plastic pots you already have and turn them into something beautiful for your home.
I grabbed 2 flower pots of different sizes from Dollar Tree to make this fabulous patio feature. I used 150 grit sandpaper to lightly scuff up the surface, then I wiped it clean to prep for painting. Then I applied silicone to a plastic lid and attached it to the bottom of the smaller pot. I siliconed all the way around the lid edge to create a waterproof seal. While it was drying, I grabbed some Rust-Oleum stone textured spray paint. I spray painted the outside of both pots and around the inside edge and let it dry overnight. I noticed some bare spots, so I applied a second coat. After the spray paint dried, I mixed ready-mix concrete in a separate bucket, following the directions on the bag. I carefully placed the wet concrete in the larger bucket. I placed a large rock in the middle to help take up space. The concrete filled the bucket about 1/3 full. It gets heavy quickly, so I did not want it to be any more full. I used a scrap piece of 2x4 to tamper down the concrete and gently jiggled the container to get rid of any bubbles and smooth it all out. After the concrete dried, I placed a plastic container in the middle so the smaller pot would sit higher up. I grabbed some garden bed pots from the recycling and used them to fill out the space without adding extra weight. Next, I placed the smaller pot on top and added river rock to cover the recycling. I washed another handful of river rocks, placed them inside the small pot, and filled it with water. Lastly, I added this solar fountain, and it was a sunny day, so it started working immediately. No batteries required. I hope this inspired you to create your own DIY fountain and patio of your dreams. Thanks for watching Hometalk, and see you next time.
I got this really beautiful calla lily, but I didn't like the red pot, so I'm going to give it a makeover. I washed the pot out, and then using some scrunched up white tissue paper, I applied some glue to the surface of the pot and then laid the tissue paper on and made sure it was stuck, and I went all around the whole pot doing that. When the tissue paper was dry, I gave it a coat of black paint. And now I'm going to make some moulds to decorate my pot. So the first thing I do is take some water and a little bit of the white glue and paint it into the bottom of the mould. There's quite a lot of water in there. Then I take some toilet tissue and very, very gently lay it down. And I pat it down, being careful because you don't want it to rip at this point. Then I fold the paper over and pat that down. You need a stiff bristle brush to do this, and I've found that a stencil brush is the best thing to use because it's small enough. What we're trying to do is push the paper down into all the detail of the mould, but we have to be very careful. I do 5 layers of the toilet tissue and then switch over to some kitchen towel. This kitchen paper is much stronger, so at this point you can be more heavy-handed pushing down the paper. So do that. I do 2 layers of that and then leave it. Now I'm doing a different mould, same process, water and glue, and then the layers of the tissue and then the layers of the kitchen paper. I leave the paper in the moulds for about 10 minutes and I push it down with my fingers as well to make sure it's really pushed down into all the grooves. And then very carefully, you can peel back this while it is obviously still very wet and take it out of the mould. And as you can see, it picks up all the details. I leave them to dry, and you can actually speed up this process with a hairdryer. This is how they look when they're dry. They're quite stiff now because of all the glue in there. So just taking a pair of regular scissors, very easy to cut out. I'm just placing my moulds where I want to stick them. The great thing about these, doing it with paper like this, is that you can actually bend them even when they're dry. They're quite pliable and quite stiff too. This is my final piece to stick on. I'm using my hot glue gun and I'm just smearing glue all over the back of the piece and then holding it in place, making sure that all the edges stick well down. Now everything's stuck in place, I'm going over all the moulds with the same black paint that I used before. And the final step is to highlight the moulds, and I'm using 2 colours of gilding wax on the tip of my finger and just gliding it very carefully across the top of the moulds. And here is my finished pot, and I like it now. I'm really happy with how this turned out. First time I've used this technique, and I think it works really well. I hope you've enjoyed this episode and you're inspired to have a go at this amazing technique. You're watching Hometalk. I'll see you next time.